Hello, I'm Diana Sky, and you're watching our Midday Report here on TVP World. And we begin with the latest from Ukraine. Well, Ukraine and the European Commission have formally unveiled a 10-point reform plan that will steer Kyiv's EU accession bid over the next 2 years. Ministers meeting in Lviv say Ukraine's membership remains on track and inevitable, despite Hungary's objections. Angela Skujins was in Lviv and has more.
The EU will not waste any time advancing Ukraine's EU accession bid. These were the words from the EU's enlargement chief, Marta Koz, in Lviv at the tail end of talks centering on whipping up support for Ukraine as well as its application to join the European Union. The war-torn country launched its bid in 2022 following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, its progress has been stalled by a stubborn bloc spearheaded by the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban. However, a 10-point list of reforms has been cooked up by the Ukrainian government and the European Commission. Ukraine has 2 years to complete this list, which aims to put the country in good stead to join the EU when and if Hungary drops its veto. Let's take a listen to what the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Koz, said about what this list entails.
They all focus on strengthening the rule of law, fighting corruption and building the strong, accountable democratic institutions in Ukraine. And these institutions Ukraine needs for the future accession process.
Strengthening the jurisdictions of Ukraine's major anti-corruption institutions, which sat at the centre of a political maelstrom weeks ago, also feature as part of this list. TVP World managed to ask the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister for EU Affairs, Taras Kachka, about the importance of Ukraine joining the EU and how this is a security guarantee to deter future Russian aggression.
We need to be united, and that's why it is clear that this is like utmost necessity for Ukraine to be together with the European Union.
26 out of 27 EU affairs ministers were present in Lviv for these talks on Thursday. The Hungarian EU affairs minister János Boka rejected the invitation when it was circulated weeks ago, sending his ambassador to represent the Central and Eastern European country in his stead. What is clear is that while Ukraine has 2 years to complete the 10-point reforms, there is no telling when the Hungarian government, led by Prime Minister Viktor Orban, will drop its bloc. Angela Skujins from Lviv for TVP World.
With civilians under fire from new Russian air attacks and fighting surging on the front line, Ukraine is racing to secure Western backing for a reworked peace proposal delivered to the United States after high-level talks with European officials.
As Ukrainian citizens are terrorized by airstrikes and Russian soldiers ramp up attacks along the front line, Kyiv delivered its own peace plan to the US after President Zelensky's meeting with French, German and UK leaders earlier this week.
Clearly, the three European leaders, they had a major input into what is acceptable, what can be presented to the Americans as a new proposal.
The new plan has 3 elements that differentiate it from the recently presented US proposal.
So number one, 28-point plan became 20-point plan because, things that Ukrainians couldn't accept were getting rid of for now. Then number 2, it's about the security guarantees, and number 3, it's about the reconstruction.
There is no doubt that it will be rejected by Moscow.
Well, we already know the answer. It's no. It's exactly the way how Ushakov, Putin's diplomatic aide, responded to any modification to the original Russia-US, let's call it this way, peace proposal.
But it is the US which seems eager to disengage from the European conflict as quickly as possible that Ukraine is trying to convince with the revised peace plan. Its specific details are not yet known, but the broad strokes of the proposal are to include NATO Article 5-like security guarantees for Ukraine, the country's EU accession by 2027, or creation of a demilitarized zone.
And for more on that, let's now move on and listen to commentary by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
And if we proceed with this process as we envision it, then there will be talks with the American government over the weekend, and then there may be a meeting here in Berlin early next week. Whether the American government participates or not, that depends very much on the joint drafting of the documents that are currently being worked on. I am reasonably confident that we will succeed, and I came away from yesterday's telephone conversation with President Trump with the firm impression that he is prepared to go down this path with us, because he knows that the Europeans must also have their own interests heard here. And we made that clear to him in yesterday's conversation.
The Czech Republic's new Prime Minister Andrej Babiš is in Brussels, where he met with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Later today, he is scheduled to meet with European Council President António Costa and Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever. Babiš, who will govern with the support of two far-right parties, campaigned on a Eurosceptic platform ahead of parliamentary elections in October, and he's pledged to block several EU initiatives on the environment and migration. Let's now go live to our correspondent who is in the Czech Republic, Andrew Sweeney. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. Now, given Babiš's Euroscepticism, let me ask you, what do you think about his choice as having Brussels as his first trip abroad? How significant is that?
I think it's very significant. As you say, Babiš campaigned in a very Eurosceptic platform during October parliamentary elections. However, that didn't seem to translate over during his meeting with von der Leyen today, which was reportedly very cordial. They discussed Ukraine, which is obviously a matter of particular note given Donald Trump's peace plan. I think it's his meeting with the Belgian Prime Minister that could have a potential being particularly interesting. Right now, there's this great debate about using frozen Russian assets in EU to finance Ukraine, and the Belgian Prime Minister has been vociferously against doing so. Now, Babiš hasn't taken a specific position on that matter, but he has said that the Czech Republic will send no state aid to Ukraine. Private companies may continue to supply the military there, but the government itself won't provide any more assistance to Kiev directly. His meeting with Costa is also likely to be quite interesting, covering, as you alluded to, the ETS2 emissions trading scheme that has been a particular bugbear of his coalition partners and motorists. They want to see it completely scrapped. And the Czech Republic is also scheduled to bring a new anti-asylum law. It would be very stringent, completely limiting all cases of asylum applications, at the rarest of the examples. That is also likely to come up too. So with his first trip abroad as Prime Minister, Babiš has also got his new government coming in on December 15th. And on December 18th, he's back in Brussels for a meeting of the European Council. So we're going to learn a lot more about the Czech Republic's government's new relationship with Brussels in the coming week. Back to you.
Let me ask you this, though, before I do let you go. I mean, you're there, you've been there on the grounds. Have you been able to speak to some just residents and local residents, and how are they really reacting to, to Babiš's win? What are they saying? Just, regular, ordinary citizens.
Well, the Czech Republic politically is a tale of two localities, you might say. In Prague, Babiš did not perform well here at all. Outside of the capital, Babiš performed very well as Anna Party completely swept the boards in the rural and small towns of the Czech Republic, particularly with regards to its policy over Ukraine. It has to be said, anti-Ukrainian sentiment has risen ever since the war started. That's partly because of the rise in the cost of living that happened at the same time in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the halt of Russian gas supplies to this country. The Czech Republic has the highest GDP per capita share, of Ukrainian refugees for any country in the EU. So while his meeting in Brussels today might not hit the headlines amongst his own constituency, it is certainly an indication that the pragmatism of Babiš may well win out, given that he has relied on this sort of anti-Ukraine sentiment amongst his voters. But where does he go in his first trip abroad? He goes to Brussels.
But Andrew, do you think that there's war fatigue among Czech residents? Is this something that you feel when you're there?
Definitely. There is a considerable sentiment of war fatigue. Again, not particularly in the capital Prague, where many public buildings and government ministries still hang the Ukrainian flag out of their windows, but in other parts of the Czech Republic. It has to be emphasized that the rise in the cost of living for what has long been a very stable economy in the Czech Republic has been associated with state aid for Ukraine. So if that as its sentiments continue, it's very likely that Babiš will follow through on his pledge to stop all state aid to Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Andrew Sweeney, for your report coming to us live from the Czech Republic. The Bulgarian government has resigned after mass protests that were held yesterday in multiple cities across the country. Prime Minister Rosen Zhelyakov has announced his resignation before a planned vote of no confidence for his minority coalition government. On Wednesday, thousands joined anti-government protests for a third consecutive week. Today's resignation paves the way for snap elections. Polish President Karol Nawrocki is in Latvia for talks with President Edgars Rinkēvičs. Their discussions are to focus on defense cooperation, economic ties, and support for the Polish community, highlighting what both leaders call exceptionally strong relations between Warsaw and Riga.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki visited his Latvian counterpart to discuss defense, trade, and programs for Polish minorities in the country. The two presidents heaped praise upon the relations between Warsaw and Riga.
Our common goals concern our independence, security, shared engagements, economic cooperation and cooperation over infrastructure. Poland and Latvia are simply united across all these matters and represent the same values. In terms of economics and security, Polish-Latvian dialogue is at a high level. I would like to thank the Polish soldiers who are stationed at the Adazi base as part of a multinational brigade where they help defend our security.
President Nawrocki visited the base to personally meet with Polish soldiers who stand guard over Latvia. The Adazi base outside the capital city Riga hosts the Canadian-led NATO multinational brigade.
Dozens of Lithuanian registered trucks remain stuck in Belarus, with Belarusian authorities restricting or preventing the trucks from leaving. And now Lithuanian carriers have begun to protest over the situation.
On Wednesday, a protest led by carriers whose vehicles and equipment remain stuck in Belarus took place in the center of Vilnius.
The situation is dire. 90% of our transportation is stranded here.
We paid 4,800 euros for 4 trailers, and no one is letting us leave. We're losing money, finances, and there's even talk of some companies going bankrupt. This is very important to us.
According to the estimates by the Lithuanian National Road Carriers Association, or Linava, carriers' losses since the beginning of the crisis now exceed 100 million euro, with over 4,000 trucks and trailers stuck across the border. Protesters submitted a petition signed during the rally to the Lithuanian parliament.
Our first request in this petition is the return of our vehicles, which are currently in Belarus through no fault of our own. Should the stalemate arise and our vehicles be confiscated, we demand compensation for the vehicles at market prices.
The Linava Association, through the International Road Transport Union, is pressing Belarusian customs to hand over the license plates of all trucks detained in Belarus. The vehicles have been stuck for over a month. Lithuania had closed its border with Belarus at the end of October due to a wave of balloons drifting into Lithuanian airspace, which Vilnius deemed part of a hybrid attack and a security threat. Belarus responded by blocking Lithuanian trucks from leaving its territory.
And that's all the news we have for you for the moment here on our Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skye. Thanks for watching, and stay with us for more news and analysis.